Hello everyone. In this video, we'll go over the Vocabulary Workshop Level Blue Unit 12 words. You can follow along at home using your book. Let's get started. Our first word is abuse. Abuse can be used as a noun or as a verb. As a noun, it means improper, wrong, or cruel treatment, insulting language. And as a verb, it means to put to bad use, to hurt or damage by treating badly. So when someone abuses something, they use it in the wrong way or they treat it very badly. And abuse is often used to talk about treating a person or an animal in a very cruel or harmful way. The first example sentence says, "The abuse of power is a danger in any government." So remember, abuse means using something in the wrong way. So if someone has a lot of power, like someone who is in government or someone like a king, for example, then they can use that power in the wrong way or they can abuse that power. So I can make a sentence like, "The king's abuse of power made the people angry." Or if we're talking about harming someone or harming an animal, I could make a sentence like, "The abuse of animals is against the law." And as a verb, we are now doing that action. We're doing the action of using something in the wrong way or not doing something correctly. The first example I could say is, if you abuse your library books, you may have to pay for the damage. So if you get this book from the library and then you rip pages out of the book, you abused that book because you used it the wrong way. And you don't always have to abuse a physical thing. You can abuse something like a privilege. For example, phones in the classroom. There are some classrooms where you're not allowed to bring your phone at all to school. But there are some where you may be allowed to bring them as long as you don't use them in the class time. So in this picture here, I can say that the girl is abusing her phone privileges by using the phone during class. So she is doing something that is not correct, not proper based on the rules or what she is supposed to do. So that is what we can call abuse. If your parents tell you that you can watch TV for 1 hour a day, but you secretly spend 3 hours watching TV, then that can also be an abuse of a privilege that you have. Our next word is appliance. And appliance is a noun. It means a machine or tool used to do a household job. So any tool in the home that helps you do different jobs around your house can be called an appliance. And they usually make everyday things like cooking, cleaning, or washing clothes much easier. The example sentence says, "It seemed an awfully big claim for such a little appliance." This sentence can be a little bit confusing, but it's talking about how there is an appliance that is small, and that appliance, maybe they made a big claim. So a claim means something that it can do. And maybe this little appliance said that it can do something very big or something very important. So the sentence is just being a little bit cautious about this little appliance, maybe saying that they don't believe that this little appliance can do such a big thing like it said that it can do. But let's look at some other examples using this word appliance. I can say a microwave is a useful kitchen appliance. Or maybe the washing machine is my favorite household appliance. I could also make a sentence like, "The repair worker came to fix our broken appliance." Or maybe, "We unplug small appliances before leaving for vacation." Since small appliances like vacuums or irons can be dangerous, it's always good to unplug them if you plan to leave for vacation. Now remember, an appliance is supposed to help you do a job around the house, so something like a television is not an appliance. It's not helping you get any job or chore done. The next word is confirm. Confirm is a verb and it means to agree or prove that something is true. To make sure, remove any doubt. So when you confirm something, you just show that it's true or you're making sure that it is correct, kind of like you're checking. You can also confirm plans or information, so there's no doubt about it. The example says, the press secretary refused to confirm the report. This sentence is also a little bit confusing, but it just means that there was some sort of report that happened and someone refused to confirm it. So they didn't want to say that this report was correct. But let's look at some other examples. I can make a sentence like, the scientists needed more evidence to confirm the results. One great thing about science is that just because you get some result one time, that doesn't mean that it's correct. They like to do experiments many, many, many times to make sure or to confirm that what they discovered is correct. I could also say something like, please confirm that you can come to the party. If you send invitations to your friends for a party, you want everyone to confirm whether they are actually going to come or not. And that can mean to say yes, they are coming, or to say no, they are not coming. Either way, they are confirming. They are telling you whether they can come or not. I can also make a sentence like, the security camera helped confirm what had happened. So security cameras can be great because if something happens like someone getting hurt and there was a security camera, then we can watch that video from the security camera to confirm or to check what happened. That way there's no doubt about what actually happened. Lastly, I can make a sentence like, can you confirm that this is the correct address? For example, if you're getting a package delivered, you might have to confirm that it is the correct address or that you are the correct person who is receiving that package. So again, anytime that you're agreeing or proving that something is true or just checking that something is correct, then you can use this verb confirm to describe that action. The next word is daze. Daze can be a verb or a noun, and it means to stun or confuse, a state of confusion. So when something dazes you, it leaves you confused or unable to think clearly for a short time. It's a confused feeling, and it can be either after a big surprise or maybe a hard hit. The example says, some predators daze their prey with a blow to the head. So when someone gets hit in the head, they might feel like this picture here for a short while. They might be a little bit confused. Maybe they might see some bright lights in their eyes. So that is called being in a daze. Another example can be if a soccer player, for example, gets hit on the head by the ball or something else, then they might be dazed for a short while after accidentally getting hit. We also said that it can be something surprising, so we can make a sentence like, when I heard that I had won the prize, I walked around in a daze. So maybe this person did not expect to win the prize, so they were very surprised or shocked, and they were just in this state of daze where they don't really know what to do. They might be like a little bit frozen or not moving around. Another time that you can be dazed is after waking up from a nap. So I can make a sentence like, after waking up from the nap, I was in a daze for a few minutes. When we use this word daze as a noun, we most often use it together with in a. So you'll always hear it as in a daze, or you can even put an adjective here. For example, I can say, I stared at the surprise party in a happy daze. So you were maybe shocked because of the surprise party and you were in a happy daze. So like a happy feeling, but you're not really sure what to do. Maybe you're not moving, you're just staring at everything that's happening. So that kind of feeling is called daze. The next word is flimsy. Flimsy is an adjective and it means not strong or solid, poorly made, not convincing. For example, I don't think my teacher believed my flimsy excuse for not doing my homework. So this example is describing this last part of the definition, something that's not convincing. If you want to tell your teacher that your excuse for not doing your homework is actually strong, you need to have a good excuse. You can't give a flimsy excuse like my dog ate my homework, for example, because then your teacher might not believe it. But when something is flimsy, that means it is weak, thin, maybe it's made in a very poor way so it can break easily. For example, I can say, the flimsy paper bag ripped before we got home. So here you can see there's a paper bag and everything fell out of the bags because they are flimsy. Maybe I can also say, the chair looks too flimsy to hold much weight. So flimsy doesn't mean something has to be old or broken. This is a new chair. But just by looking at this chair, you can tell that it's not very strong. It looks like the legs here are very thin and it probably is not going to hold someone who is very heavy. So it's a flimsy chair. I can also make a sentence like, the tent was so flimsy that the wind knocked it over. So this tent was not very strong or not very solidly attached to the ground, so we can describe it as being flimsy. So again, you can describe things as flimsy, or also reasons and ideas can be flimsy too if they're not very strong. The next word is gauge. Gauge can be used as a noun or as a verb. As a noun, it is a standard measure used to tell size, thickness, and so on. An instrument used to measure. For example, a rain gauge measures rainfall. So here's an example of what a rain gauge looks like. This little tool catches rain, and then you can check the measurement on it to see how much rainfall there was. So I could make a sentence like, the rain gauge showed that 5 centimeters of rain had fallen. You can also have a temperature gauge. Usually cars will have a temperature gauge like this one that tells you how hot or cold the car's engine is. If the engine gets too hot, it can be dangerous. So you should carefully look at this temperature gauge. Gauge is also used as a verb to measure, to estimate. So you are trying to kind of carefully think about the size of something or the distance of something. For example, the cat seemed to gauge the distance before jumping onto the windowsill. So in this sentence, gauge is an action. So he is thinking about, he is estimating some kind of distance. Just like in this video here, you can see before the cat jumps, it's thinking carefully about how much power it has to put into its legs to jump. So this kind of consideration or thinking about it, we can call it gauge. He's gauging the distance. I can also say, I tried to gauge how heavy the box was before lifting it. Maybe you can make a guess about how heavy something is based on what's inside of it. So you're gauging how heavy something is. Or if you're talking with your friend and you need to tell your friend something that they might not like, you can try to gauge how your friend will react to that news. So it really is like trying to guess or estimate something. The next word is migrant. Migrant is a noun, and a migrant is an animal or person that moves to a different region, so a different place, as the seasons change. It's also a farm worker who moves seasonally to pick different crops. So, the important thing about the word migrant is that it is based on the season. So, it's people or animals that are moving because of the season. And a lot of times we use it to talk about specifically farm workers who are moving to different places because of the seasons in different places. The example sentence says, "We passed a field full of migrants picking berries." So this is an example in this picture here. There might be some migrants. So all of these workers on the farm could be migrants that traveled there to pick the crops during that season. I can also say, Canada geese are migrants that fly south for the winter. So they move to a different location based on the season. The next word is neutral. Neutral is an adjective, and neutral is not taking any side in a disagreement or war, lacking distinction. The example says, Switzerland remained neutral in World Wars I and II. So Switzerland is a country in Europe, and when there was a war, they remained neutral. So they did not pick any side. They didn't want to be with one of the people or the others. They just didn't participate in the war. So that is being neutral. When you're neutral, you're trying to not take either side, and someone who especially has to be neutral might be someone like a teacher or a parent and a judge. So a teacher would probably be neutral while trying to listen to two students who are fighting, because the teacher wants to make sure that she understands both of the reasons from both of the students, so she can be neutral. The same is true with a parent who has two children. They need to be neutral and listen to both of the children before making a decision. A judge is also someone who has to be neutral. The judge can't have an opinion about whether someone is guilty or not guilty before they hear the evidence. So the judge must remain neutral throughout the trial. Neutral can also mean lacking distinction. So something that does not stand out, something that is very plain, can be called neutral. For example, here are some neutral colors. Neutral colors are colors like grays or very light browns. They don't really stand out or look very shocking when you're looking at these colors. So a lot of people will often choose to have a neutral bedroom like this one here because they think that these colors are very relaxing since they don't stand out. Our next word is pitiless. Pitiless is an adjective, and it means showing no sorrow or regret for another's suffering or troubles. So when someone is pitiless, they show no kindness or mercy toward someone. They just don't care about other people's pain or discomfort. You might have heard the word pity before. When you pity someone, then you are showing sorrow or sympathy when someone is suffering. So this word pitiless is the opposite of that. We're not showing that we care at all when someone is hurting or in danger. The example sentence says, "The audience booed the pitiless villain." So often villains in stories will be described as being pitiless because they're usually doing very evil things and they don't care what happens to anyone else. Another example of someone who might be described as being pitiless is someone like a bully, because usually they don't care about hurting the feelings of other people. Another example would be the pitiless hunter ignored the injured animal. So someone who ignores animals who are injured can be described as being pitiless because they're not showing any sorrow for the animal's pain. Or I could say something like, everyone hoped the judge would not be pitiless when deciding the punishment. So usually we want a judge to be neutral and not have an opinion, but we don't want them to be pitiless because people can make mistakes. And just because someone makes a mistake, that doesn't make them a bad person. So if we have a judge who is pitiless, then just one small mistake might lead this person to go through a lot of suffering. So that's also something to think about. Another example could be the movie showed a pitiless pirate who never helped anyone. The next word is presentable. Presentable is an adjective and it means fit to be seen or inspected. So when something is presentable, it is neat, it is clean, and it looks good enough for other people to see it. So we can describe people, rooms, or even your work as being presentable. The example says, my parents insisted that I wear presentable clothing. So presentable clothing is something that might look like this. It can be just regular clothing too, but it is something that it would be okay for other people to see if you go out somewhere. So for example, pajamas would not be presentable clothes, especially if you're going somewhere nice like a restaurant. You might wear presentable clothes if you're going to take family photos. Another thing that should be presentable, especially if guests are coming over to your house, is your room. So your parent might ask you to please clean your room until it is presentable. That means it's good enough for other people to see it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough for people to see it. I could also say something like, she brushed her hair to look more presentable. So if your hair looks like this, it would not be very good for you to go outside like this and other people to see you like this. So you need to brush your hair until it is presentable, until it's good enough for other people to see it. The next word is rotate. Rotate is a verb and it means to turn around a central point, to alternate. The example says, do you know how long it takes Earth to rotate once? So, of course, we know that Earth rotates once every 24 hours. That's why there are 24 hours in a day. So, just like Earth here, rotating means something is turning around a center point. For example, the wheels on a car rotate. I can say the tires rotate as the car moves down the road. Or in a fan, there are blades like this one here. This one is a ceiling fan that rotate. So they move around in a circle. I can say the ceiling fan rotates to keep the room cool. And rotate can also be to alternate. And an example of that might be in a classroom. There might be different stations that the teacher sets up with different activities, and then students might spend a certain amount of time in one station before they rotate and they go to the next station, and so on until all of the stations are completed. So that can also be described as rotating. So I could make a sentence like, the teacher asked us to rotate to the next station every 10 minutes. The last word is shred. Shred is a noun and it can also be used as a verb. So as a noun, a shred is a thin strip, a tiny piece or amount. For example, not a shred of evidence was found. This sentence is talking about the evidence that a police officer might look for. If someone does a crime, they need evidence like footprints or fingerprints or drops of blood, something like that to show who is guilty. But if there's no evidence at all, then a phrase that the police officer might use is that there's not a shred of evidence. That means not even one little tiny piece or one little tiny amount. Another example of things that are often described as being shreds is cheese. So here are shreds of cheese. I can make a sentence like, he ate every shred of cheese on his pizza. Or I could say something like, please shred the old papers before throwing them away. As a verb, shred also means to cut or tear into thin strips or small pieces, to rip up. So just like in this picture here, this machine is shredding the paper. It's cutting it up into thin strips. And the second example says, the aide, an aide is just a helper. The aide will shred the company's old files. And files can also be things like paper. So this sentence is just talking about someone shredding the paper like in this picture here. You can shred a paper using machines like this, or you can just shred it with your hands by ripping it apart into small pieces. And it's not just for paper things. We already talked about cheese as one of the foods that you can shred. Another example might be something like chicken. If you're making a salad, for example, you might shred the chicken into small pieces and then put it on your salad. And that's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye!